Hey guys, welcome to The Bottom Half is Red. I'm your host, Baron Longstrath, and I am excited to bring to you a show that is going to give you some thought-provoking discussions. It's going to give you some expert insights to both encourage and some practical steps for how to build an organization that can more effectively introduce the world to Jesus Christ. So what is The Bottom Half is Red? It's all about building a culture of excellence. It's about growing your unique and creative identity. And it's about carrying out the will of God at any cost. So you're going to see that through practical teaching tips, developing a culture of giving, creating branding and marketing, or even methods to help guests feel safe and welcomed. This podcast is going to have you covered. But before we dive into today's episode, I want to take just a moment and extend a special invitation to all of our dedicated listeners. If you're looking to get even more involved in our community and gain some access to some behind-the-scenes stuff, become a Patreon supporter. And you can find that link in the episode description or even on Patreon. Just visit The Bottom Half is Red. Listen, we can't wait to welcome you on board and to share this exciting journey. Now, let's jump into today's episode. Well, hey, welcome to The Bottom Half is Red. We have Baron Carson, and we are excited about his input. For those of you that might not be familiar, he pastors presently, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pastor Carson, but you pastor Paris, is it Center Church?
It is, with the E before, or with the R before the E.
With the R before the E, and has been pastoring for the last little over 4 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Little over 4 years. Has had a heart for missions for nearly 10 years, somewhere around 9 years. And then prior to that, served a local church in Bossier City, Louisiana.
Right.
And with him and his wife on staff there, but he is I'll call you a marketing specialist, and has a degree in marketing and worked in that industry before being called to the mission field. And it makes this conversation, as we center it, E before R, as we center. And so the conversation today is going to be centered around the importance of branding, the importance of marketing. And I believe that every pastor and minister, every lay individual that might be interested in this presently or in the future is going to quickly see how necessary it is for us to properly approach and engage in our world around us. So we're very excited. Thank you, Pastor Carson, for being on the program. And we are excited about asking you these questions.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's always great to connect.
The two Barons, one with two R's and one with one R.
This episode should be called Baron Squared.
Yeah. Dave was already saying something about that. Baron and Baron or something like that. Baron, let's dive in. It's weird saying my own name. I want you to know that. I think this is the first time ever.
You know, you are only the second Baron I've ever met.
First name Baron?
Yeah.
Really? So I've met some last name Barons. Well, let's dive in. And, you know, the questions that we ask, you can answer them extensively and however you feel to go off and better identify what you feel like would be important and help us be better at presenting the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world, because it's super, super important. Yeah. So Baron, let me ask you a quick question here. What is the difference between branding and marketing?
That's a great question. People use it interchangeably, and I personally don't make any great distinctives between those two. I think it's great if people are having a conversation. It's kind of like people arguing about what version of the Bible to read. Most people arguing about it aren't reading their Bible. So I'm just happy a conversation is being had. So with that said, branding is really the personality of your organization, your church, your company. It's the way that people feel about it. It's your personality. And people sometimes mistakenly think that branding is just your logo, or just your merch that you have on your table. That's not branding. Marketing is building the brand awareness. So making people aware of your personality, making people aware of what your business is or what your organization is. So on the marketing side, on the brand awareness side, that is where you get into the name of your organization, the look of your organization, the logos and things like that. So there is a clear difference between marketing and branding. Branding is that can kind of go deep, but simply put, it's basically the personality of your organization, which is sometimes hard to define. The challenge with pastors is we typically have an overinflated, insulated view of what people think about our church and organization that does not always reflect reality.
Yeah.
So sometimes the way that you think about your organization is not necessarily your brand. Your brand is what people think about whenever you ask them at Walmart, what do you think about my church? So anyway, that would be how I would simply define that. And again, you could go off into some very academic approaches that may or may not be relevant for this conversation today.
Well, that's incredible information just to begin with. Now, how important is it for us to, relook at our branding?
You can look at corporations as an example. We are not in the corporate world,
sure.
And it's a dangerous thing sometimes to take the business world and apply it to the church.
I agree.
But it's also a dangerous thing to not look at good practices and not apply that to the church as well. So with that said, this is just my personal rule of thumb. My personal rule of thumb is every 5 to 7 years, branding should be refreshed. With that said, I don't typically recommend dramatic refreshes because that creates cognitive dissonance with your people. Like, church knew what's going on with our church. Have we changed? And it makes people a bit uncomfortable. Some of the best branding changes are not super noticeable. And I think it's important that you're able to carry the personality of that brand change into whatever you're doing in the future. So and I'm currently making the mistake of what I just said originally, the difference between branding and marketing. I've experienced churches, and I'm sure that you have as well, most of us have, where people think that their church is friendly. And if you go there as a guest preacher, it's going to feel friendly because you're the guest and like everyone wants to say hi to you. But if you're there really as a guest, that's when you find out if the church is friendly or not. I've been to some very unfriendly churches that the pastor thinks that they're friendly, the staff thinks that they're friendly because they're friends. And you don't know if a church is friendly or not until someone that's not connected to your church tells you that information. So in the conversation of marketing and branding, it goes much deeper than just the way that you look. I'm of the opinion it goes down into the personality of the church. And depending on the size of your church, depending on the congregation, and it may not even depend on the size of the church, but it's going to take on the personality of the pastor. If the pastor's a little bit challenging to connect with, it's been my observation that the church is going to be a bit challenging to connect with each other. It's just what gets embedded in the congregation. What we've done locally at Paracenter Church is we've asked hard questions. We've brought people in from the outside. Every newcomer that comes to our church that I'm able to sit down and have conversations with, I'm asking them hard questions. What did it feel like when you first came here? What was your experience when you walked through the doors? And did you know where to go? Did you know what to do? So I'm personally constantly trying to figure out how to adjust our brand, because it's not all about us. Now that's our personality.
Right.
Now, when it comes to marketing, which I think may have been the question that was specifically asked, logos and things like that, I think they should be refreshed every 5 to 7 years, unless it's something super, super solid. Sometimes it doesn't need to get refreshed, but as trends change, it's unwise not to look at what you're doing.
Right. No, I think both of those, marketing and branding, the question is can cross-pollinate between both, because what we've done here at the church today is we will push a regular through the church, and they'll go, it's from the front door all the way through, and they are on a mission. I've never asked a new person, what did you see? I've never asked them that kind of question. It's not something that I wouldn't ask them. It's something I haven't really thought in regard to ask them that question. But we did an episode on trash cans because one of the things that we did notice is that we didn't have trash cans. And so we're supplying the church with coffee. We're supplying newcomers with coffee. You can hide behind your cup, you feel comfortable, and yet there's no place to throw it away. And so, yes, the episode was called Trash Cans, but it wasn't centered around that. It was centered around, some of the things that we overlook presently within the personality of our church that we become used to, but others are not used to. And
I think you just hit on a point that I like to keep in mind a lot. The big things that you need to do are so easy not to do. I mean, they're easy to do, but they're just as easy not to do. Yeah. And if they're easy not to do, you overlook them.
No, that's so, and you're right. And it's easier for me to see past what I've become used to.
Right.
So I think reassessing or reevaluating is so important. And I like the fact that you said, look at both the personality of your church and then how others perceive the personality of church. Be willing to say nothing should be so concrete that I'm not willing to say, okay, is there something that's missing here?
Absolutely. We talk about sacred cows and the challenge of the church. It's an organization created for outsiders, but the insiders of the church want it for them. And you have this fight back and forth between keeping the people that are keeping the lights on comfortable and making sure it's a place where people that don't attend church want to come and experience the power of God. Anyway.
I think one thing that is important to me is we are a people of the altar. It's super important to us. And the personality of the church should never get in the way of somebody's, especially some new person, of their opportunity to experience the power of the altar. And so if anything on the front side is affecting the altar, we should be willing to address it. But certainly, I do believe that there are walls that we ourselves can put in front and hinder the way that people ever even make the decision to say, I'm going to move forward with this. Does that make sense?
The Spirit can draw, but we can push people away
100%.
If we don't handle things wisely.
100%. I'm learning right now, and I appreciate even the perspective. So take us past just, those people that are presently a part of our congregation. And let's look beyond that and let's look into an online presence. How important is having an online presence?
My response to this may be a bit controversial. I am of the personal opinion, if a church is not stewarding their online presence, then they're being spiritually irresponsible and they don't truly care about their community.
So good.
And that they don't truly care about reaching people. I understood the spirit behind the statistic. I personally think it was inaccurate. Maybe they repeated something from someone that people that come to church, most people come to church by personal invitation. And I understand they were trying to get people involved in evangelism. And that may be true in Coshada, Louisiana. It may be true in some small city that you are in. Your audience is going to be spread the gamut between small and large cities. And I can't speak to all areas. What I am trying to say, I cannot tell you the number of churches that I've tried to find online and they just don't exist. So it's obvious they don't exist for others. They exist for themselves. So that's a vision problem.
Yeah.
The other challenge that I have seen with churches is if they do have an online presence, you can't find information about their service times or where they're located, and it's like, what are you doing? This is something that I was just talking to a friend of mine about this week with some churches in our local area. You go to their website, you don't know what their telephone number is. You don't know what their address is, what their service times are. Those are super simple things. And again, they're so simple to do, so you just don't do them or you don't think about it because you know that. So looking at the church from the outside, it's very important to have someone from the outside look at your church and provide that feedback, or you need to go look at your church from the outside from a critical perspective. One of the, and I can only speak from our personal experience. I don't want to project on anyone else. About 90% of the people that come into Paris Center Church are there because of our online presence.
Wow.
We are not doing Facebook advertising. I don't pay for advertising. We're just not paying for advertising. I'm not against it. We do. I will again. But the people that come are not they're not there because I'm running Google AdWords or because I'm running Facebook ads. About 15, sometimes 20, about 15% of the people that sit on our church, that come to our church on Sundays, are first-time guests. And of those, the majority are there because of our external presence. Now, one of the things that's kind of cool is we think about our external presence for reaching the lost. And I would make a strong argument that that's the number one priority. But the church is also, we're there to disciple believers and help people grow in their faith. So that means that we're also supposed to be a beacon for people that might be moving into your area that need a church. We've got several people that attend our church because we're on the YouVersion Bible app, and they have found us on YouVersion. They've moved to Paris looking for a church, and they've discovered us on the YouVersion. I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah.
I had forgotten I had set it up. It was some feature that was released, and I started having people show it from the YouVersion Bible app. I'm like, how did you get here again? So it's just really, really important for us to take a look at all the possible ways that we can turn the lights on so people can find us.
So I heard an expression, I can't remember where it came from or how long ago I heard it, but I wish I had it. But somebody said the new front door of the church is your online presence.
It was Kerry Newhoff.
Okay. So agree, disagree?
1,000% agree. And in our previous conversation, I was mentioning not going to a restaurant before you check the reviews.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with churches. If someone is looking for a church, only a person that is not really plugged into the 21st century is just going to come into your front door. Most people are going to have looked at you online. They're going to want to see pictures of what the inside of your service looks like. There's nothing scarier to someone than coming up to a church door and they're spiritually vulnerable at that moment. For someone to have taken the step to come to your church, there's a hunger, there's some spiritual vulnerability there. And for them to grab that door for the first time, sometimes try to put my mind into their mind. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What are they going to feel when they open up that door for the first time? So one of the things I like to think about from a branding marketing perspective is how can I lower that sense of anxiety from that grabbing that handle for the first time. And that's done with our online presence. That's done with presenting ourselves to the world, not in a false or inflated way, but presenting ourselves in a comfortable way so that people know what's on the other side of the door.
Bro, that's so good. The proverbial tugging at the front door. I want to say The Culture Code is the book. And one of the main introductory points that the author was making was, the standardization of, the expectation across the board, being friendly, being clean, things of that nature. But you're talking about something at a whole different level. You're talking about something where I'm allowing an opportunity for the most vulnerable part of me to be exposed, and I'm willing to take a step. So online presence, we're talking about basic stuff like website. Let's tap in just a little bit further. Let's go social media. And just in your opinion, how open should we be? What kind of things should be highlighted within the local church? What are the expectations outside? Because you're saying 90%. And I know you're talking about your area, but 90%. So what is it that is attractive, that is bringing people in your direction?
I don't want to take this off into a different direction, but you're kind of tapping into something that I have attempted to articulate to others who have asked the same question. It's very arguably we've had very great success in what we've experienced in our church in the past 4 years. Our church has more than doubled in size. We've increased by 110%. We've got new people walking through the door all the time. And I want to answer your marketing question. I want to go off that direction, but I don't want to blame everything on marketing.
Sure.
Our church has daily prayer from 5 to 5:30 a.m. every day to 9 to 9:30 p.m. every night. There's an hour of prayer that our church is doing. We're praying for our city. We're praying for the lost. We're praying that God would draw the hungry and the thirsty to us. So the way as a pastor, as a spiritual leader, that I look at our success is if we were just looking at the marketing side, we would be failing because we would get people maybe through the door in the flesh, but I feel like there might be something missing there. So we've got the spiritual side of it, and then we've got the business or the marketing side of it. And we have great organizational things that we've worked on. And when these two pieces of the puzzle come together, then you have some real progress that you start to see made and conversions happening, and people come and they stick. They're not leaving because they're not there. They're not drawn for entertainment. They're drawn by the Spirit. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to something I had mentioned earlier about being spiritually responsible by taking care of your online presence. Your question was asked, how open should you be? There obviously are some nuances of faith that not everyone is ready. I wouldn't suggest necessarily getting into the meat of the word, keeping it to the milk of the word in terms of social media stuff if you're sharing sermon clips and things like that online. It's a matter of knowing your audience, knowing who it is that you're connecting with. Regionally, that's going to vary the tone in which you speak, the things that may or may not be appropriate to what you're sharing. Every time that I am going to communicate to a church, or if I'm going to communicate to an audience, I want to know who is the audience? What is the audience primarily made up? Who is my target audience? And we need to be thinking about that as well on social media. If there are some legacy churches, not necessarily in our denomination. I'm thinking across Christendom. And if you look at the way that some legacy churches do social media, they're trying to communicate to the boomers and the people that have the money and the people that have propped the church up for years that aren't necessarily going to be the future of the church. And I'm not saying whether that's a good thing or bad thing, but I am saying the way that you communicate that you communicate online is going to be driven by who your target audience is. Ours in Paris, we are an international church. We have about 130 different nationalities represented every Sunday. So whenever we're doing stuff online, I attempt to feature a wide variety of nationalities. A ton of our students are hyphen age or are college, university, young professionals. So we typically feature people that are more predominant in our congregation because it's kind of our target audience. I'm talking a lot. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, you're answering it right there.
So anyway, that's kind of where we are.
No, I appreciate it. And, if we're asking questions like this, I think your point is critical for everyone to understand. And that is, this is not in the place of.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. This is coupling itself with.
Yes.
And so
yes.
Without the fundamental nature of who we are and what we're called to be, without that being employed and us taking a very intentional stance on that, such as prayer, such as fasting, being people of the word. I think branding is and marketing your brand is so critical when we think of, okay, what are pitfalls? What are things that we could avoid doing, avoid highlighting, some of the things that would be the salt and light, So, and I think you're answering those things, target audience, one thing. Also, it's such a great point when you said, perhaps the milk of the word rather than the meat of the word. Am I pushing out highlights And I'm taking mental notes because I know what is pushed out on our own personal stuff. And are we trying to substantiate on that post, some in-house principle? Or are we utilizing, and let me say it like this, is that consistent? Are we doing that consistently? So are we just consistently feeding our own people and reminding us how awesome the service is? Or can we utilize a more, or at least push some of that together so that we can maybe throw the line out to those who are hungry and thirsty?
Whenever I'm having consultations with people, and this is not a consultation, this is a conversation, but sometimes stuff comes up in consultation. Oh, I should have thought about that before. But one of the things that we're talking about when people view the church on social media, what is it that people are looking for?
Yeah.
I am absolutely 100% convinced that the greatest emotional scourge of the 21st century is loneliness. People are starving for connection. They're starving for someone that they can talk to about life and share life with. They're longing for a connection, and we're so separated by technology. And I'm a technology nerd. I love technology, but as much as it connects us, it also separates us. And one of the values that we can bring into social media is not, sermon highlights are great, and we occasionally do that. That's fine. But one of the values that we can bring to social media is showing the life of the church. That this is a place where you're safe. This is a place where we can share life. This is a place where we can explore our faith. We can explore our doubts. We can explore the things that challenge us in our social life and culture. That we present the church as a safe place, because that's what the church should be.
I love that.
Is a safe place. So whenever we are pushing our stuff out on social media, when we're presenting our church online, I'm personally against, again, this is just my personal opinion. This is not a marketing opinion. This is just Barron. I don't like social media trends. Like, if other churches are doing it and it's some trend, I don't like to jump on that bandwagon. I'm not trying to be cool. I want to be real. There's a difference between being real and cool. And I think it's important that whenever we're putting stuff online, that we're real.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. If you are a country church in a city of 700 people, and you're trying to act like Elevation Church online, you're fake.
Right.
You're not real.
Right.
And if you're trying to act like something that you're not, and people come to you, then you can't be trusted.
Yeah.
So it's important that it goes back to that, knowing your audience. Who is it that you're talking to? And I don't like fake. I need things real. And we as a church, I think we've got to look at the way that we do stuff and make sure we're keeping it real.
Yeah, I love what you said, because I feel like that you can utilize technology and you can publicize who you really are. You don't have to use technology just to use technology. I love that. I have a question, and I want you to help me, because, and I know this is probably an old terminology, but I still see it. You could be sitting somewhere and you could see a commercial and you say, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. But the concept of content marketing, is that relevant for the church?
I think it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on your situation. It depends on what you're trying to do. It can depend on your season. That's kind of a challenging thing to answer. I think that almost all marketing is relevant to the church. Okay. But it's not all relevant all at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's maybe I should have said it like that. Well, I just, you see these, and you could see it on a billboard, you could see it on a BMW commercial, and they're talking about, I don't know, whatever. I'm just making a scenario up, but BMW is talking about, building a house for such and such people in such and such neighborhood, or they're highlighting a coffee company that is, producing half of their, outsource for, an orphanage in Zimbabwe. Right. You get that. And it's like, I'm building brand awareness by showing you what we're doing, by who we are. And, is that an effective way? Should a church even try to do that? Is it worth even maybe you answered it already by saying it's seasonal.
Yeah, I think absolutely it's relevant. There's I forget who wrote the book. There's a book called Funnels. It's blue and white. I forget who wrote this book.
The Funnel, 10 Secrets of Extraordinary Church Growth by Ross Turner.
That's it. And it's it takes the concept of marketing funnels and applies it to the church. And that we don't really think about stuff like that. Like, for example, your YouTube channel is a funnel, your Instagram is a funnel, your Facebook's a funnel, all these different areas and ways to get people to you are kind of funnels. Your email marketing is a funnel. So you doing content marketing and using strategies to engage and connect with your audience, I think is totally relevant, but like anything, it runs its course.
Yeah.
And it's important for us to know the season that we're in. If you are, this is totally stupid, but imagine it's December the 15th and you're advertising for your Easter program that's coming up in March and April. Well, that's dumb.
Yeah.
You're in the wrong season.
Yeah.
So it's important to lick your finger, stick it in the air and see which way the wind is blowing and figure out what you need to do.
That's so good. We talked about a church that might be in a city that's 700 people, Let's look at that type of church, and especially let's call it a smaller congregation or maybe a new congregation.
Yeah. And
they don't always have the benefit of what we'll call that kind of creative, who understands, trends or the branding market or, even the personality. And maybe they're in the beginning of developing culture, or maybe they're 30 years old and they're trying to come into this. What entry steps would you say, hey, this is what I would do if I were in either that new space or that coming into that new space?
The absolute first thing that I would do, which is relevant to this church in a city of 700 people, it's relevant to a church in a city of 7 million people. It is to get yourself on Google My Business, on Google Business. So many churches have not done this, and that's going to get you put into the public eye. The URL for that would be google.com/business. It's a free profile. Everyone loves free. All of the tools that we use are free. But Google My Business is going to get you put into Google Maps. It's going to allow people to leave reviews for you. I recommend everyone doing this, no matter the size of your church. If you've not done this, you don't care about this conversation, you should probably just turn this podcast off and go listen to John Grisham book or something. If you have not put your church on Google, you need to pause this podcast and go and do it immediately. It's critical that people can find you on Google Maps. And it's not just Google Maps. It bleeds across the internet. It sticks you in the Google ecosystem. This may be sacrilegious. You can delete this if you need to delete it. But Google's a bit like God. They're everywhere. They're behind the scenes running stuff on the internet. And even when you don't see Google, Google is still influencing things on the internet. It's absolutely imperative that your church, no matter what the size of it is, has gotten themselves established on Google. Then what you need to do is if you've got a phone that has been made in the past 5 years, you've got a good camera on your phone, take some good pictures of your church, take some pictures of people worshiping, take a picture of the worship, make it where people can kind of get a feel of what your church is like before they get into it. And you put that on Google Maps. And then when someone searches Harvest Time Church in Podunk City, wherever, they're going to be able to get a feel for your church. And it's absolutely free. It doesn't take some great media team. One person can do this. The other thing that I suggest doing is getting your church put on YouVersion. You can go to, it's YouVersion.church. Let me verify that real quick. It's YouVersion.church. Again, this is absolutely free. Yeah, that's what it is. It's YouVersion.church. And it gives your church a profile in the Bible app. And then what we do at our church is we ask people, if you're a member of our church, go and say that that you are part of our church on the Bible app. We can publish reading plans to the church on there. We can publish updates. So sometimes, like if I've preached a sermon or if I've taught a series, that next week I will publish maybe an outline or some points from my message just to where it carries the ball a little bit further using the YouVersion Bible app. Those are two absolutely free, absolutely simple things that anybody can do. I do understand that not everyone has access to an amazing media team with photographers running around their church and videographers catching you at just the right time, at just the right shout beat. I understand not everybody has, and most people don't have that. But that doesn't mean you cannot be successful in presenting yourself online. Sometimes we wait for perfection to do anything, and if you wait for perfection, you're never going to go anywhere.
Yeah, so good. Would you say that having some kind of a social media presence would be secondary to all of that? Just signing up for Instagram? Okay.
Absolutely. Having a social media presence is extremely important. But if you are going to start somewhere, that would be the baseline that I would start. I'll tell you another mistake that I see churches making, and this may or may not be relevant to this conversation. I feel like it is. Sometimes churches, they just want to broadcast their service on Facebook. I get it. That's where people are, and there's a lot more interaction that's taking place on Facebook. However, if you're broadcasting on Facebook, it's just as simple to also broadcast to YouTube. And I highly recommend that your church services are on YouTube, because that's also feeding the Google beast information about your church, and it just gives you greater visibility. So anyway, that's kind of a side note, a little lagniappe.
That's so good. As we funnel towards a close, can you leave us with maybe something we haven't talked about that you would see essential for the local church from your perspective? Whatever you might, you understand the concept of what we're talking about much more than I would have the ability to be able to ask proper questions. So leave us with what you feel like would be critical to close out this great conversation.
You probably have people in your church that are there that are ready and willing to help you. It's a great way to get people involved. And if you're a pastor or leader, don't do it all yourself. We as pastors sometimes are control freaks and micromanagers. It's okay to let your hand off the steering wheel a little bit. And you should always have veto power, is my opinion anyway. Right. You have veto power. I hold the master passwords to all of our stuff. But it's important that you are opening the door for other people to get involved. It's a great place for young people to get involved. They're on TikTok doing stupid stuff. Give them a camera and let them work in church. Let them do stuff that's valuable to the kingdom. We've got to put a vision into people that we work with, that we're not doing this for pride. We're not doing this to make ourselves look good. At the end of the day, what we are looking at in terms of branding, marketing, this whole conversation is about souls. It's about bringing people to a point where they can have a connection, have an experience with God. And if we're just feeding our pride, if we're just feeding ourselves, our image to make ourselves look good, we have the wrong motivation, and your success is going to be a failure. Yeah. You can gather people in a building, and that doesn't make it a church. So I think it's very important that when we're doing this, that we're sharing vision about why we're doing what we're doing, and then opening up the doors for other people to get involved. There's nothing worse than trying to do everything yourself. Open the door and let other people help you.
It's so good. I was reading today in my personal study, just between me and the Lord and my devotion, and I came across the closing scripture in Genesis 4. It's 26. This is so unique. And it says, "And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord." And I highlighted that in my own personal reading, and I journaled a little bit about that. There is argument on what that last line really means. I guess here's what I'm saying, is there was a point, maybe it's a better way to say it, where culture changed.
Yeah.
And it was birthed. And at that birthing, the Bible specifically says, then began man. So it wasn't just one person, but what I'm saying, there was a birth towards the future of how culture changed. And absolutely. I want, and here's how I felt like the Lord was really impacting me and preparing somewhat for this conversation, I felt the Lord was trying to help me understand that we can be a part of cultural change. And I want to do my best in my city and my region, and I know you feel the same way, Baron. I want to do my best to be able to positively highlight the work of God, the things of God, and to change.
Absolutely.
Like, not just locally in my own church or the church that I pastor, but I want to change the culture of our city.
Right.
And what an opportunity to be able to do some of that through, like what you said, that spiritual preparation, those things that we can't deviate from, but also saying there are avenues through which we can publicize the goodness of God, the mercies of God, the love of God, the change that God brings. You know what I'm saying? And I would love for our culture to be able to reference, then begin men to call upon the name of the Lord.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, bro, thank you so much. We know you're busy. We know that you're a man that is on both sides of the world right now, and I know you might be on this side of the world, but you're still handling things on the other side of the world. And thank you for taking the time to bless our audience, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. Thank you so much, man.
Well, it was an honor to connect with you guys today, and I'm thankful for this conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Bottom Half is Red. Listen, I hope you have enjoyed your time with us today and gained something of value. If you love what you heard today, please do not forget to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps us. Your feedback is incredibly crucial, and we want to improve on what we're doing and to bring you the best content possible. You can find us on Facebook, look us up, Instagram, even YouTube at The Bottom Half is Red. Hey, be sure to check the episode description for any links to any resources that we have mentioned during the show. You don't want to miss out. This podcast is a production of The Church Today here in the great city of Tulsa, and the executive producer is our very own David Tandera. I hope you've had a fantastic time, and we look forward to having you with us again on our next episode of The Bottom Half is Red. We'll see you then.